Hey everybody, I'm Michele Harris. I've been going to church here now for about 24 years. When I was little, my mom took me and my brother to this tiny little Methodist church not far from here. Um, Alan and I were the youngest in the congregation, and then next was my mom, followed by a precious little group of senior citizens. So basically, this church was dying out. Very small church. Our normal attendance on a Sunday when I was growing up was about 8. So our preacher also doubled as our piano player. And I remember he had this little cassette recorder, and after the service every week he would go up there and he would play a tape of him playing the piano just so he could give an invitation. And so when I was little, I thought that was just kind of silly, kind of cheesy. I thought, does he not say there's only 8 people here? But it was actually kind of genius because, he was going to give that invitation no matter what, because there were lost people in the crowd and me being one of those. So when I got a little older, I didn't really like going to church. It was kind of boring. I had the older people there. I just didn't feel like there was anything there for me. There's nobody there my age. And so, right here, I want to give a plug to our youth program and thank Travis and really anybody who's done things for or helped with the youth, because it is very important to keep our youth engaged in church. My story might be a little different had I been involved in some sort of youth program. But when I was about 13, our pastor was just really pressuring me to make a decision. He would bring me books and material pamphlets. He made many, many visits to our house. And just honestly, it was kind of aggravating me. I didn't like it. And so I decided what I was going to do. I was going to just go up there and pretend to get saved, just so he would leave me alone. So one Sunday, he played his little cassette recorder, and sadly, that's exactly what I did. I walked right up and I pretended through the whole thing. And honestly, it's not something I like to think about or talk about. It was just kind of a dark moment in my life. So time rocked on. Still didn't want to go to church. I just went occasionally when my mom made me, or something special was going on there. Then when I was 16, I started dating Jimmy, and he and his family was not involved in a church either. So he and I both would look for reasons not to go to church then. We were good kids, never got in any trouble, but we were both lost. Then in 1996, that's when we got married. And I remember calling different churches in the area, just asking, do they allow weddings for non-members? Weddings are supposed to be, meaningful. And, it's kind of sad to think back that, basically we got married at the first church that said yes. And neither of us really had any affiliation with the church. I think Jimmy had went there when he was a kid, but that was about it. So Jimmy and his dad were involved in an antique tractor and engine club. And they like to fool around with old tractors and engines. And Arliss and Joyce McGuire was also in that club. And it's also how I met John Trosco and Susan. So one day we were outside, and Arliss and Joyce came up our driveway. And of course, I thought it was just going to be a tractor conversation of some kind, but they got out, got to talking, and I realized that they had personally come to our house to invite us to church. And I remember thinking, wow, it made me feel good that they had done that. So we talked about it, and we really thought, why are we not in church? Let's give it a try. So we decided to visit. So I grew up here in Thorptown. I knew the church. I knew most of the members. Went to VBS here as a kid. So we started visiting, and it just felt natural. Everybody was so nice and welcoming. It just felt like this is where we should need to be. So I think the Lord was really dealing with Jimmy right off the bat when we started visiting. And a few weeks later, back when we had Monday night visitation, Greg Lane and Kelly Smith came by our house. Started talking, and Jimmy, was talking to him about, how he was feeling, and he just really he gave his life to Jesus right there in our living room that night. And so it was a beautiful moment, something I won't forget. But that's when the Lord really started dealing with me. I just had this huge burden because remember I was pretending since I was 13, and so the Lord was dealing with me. So that next Sunday we were still, in service, and Brother Allen was preaching, and I remember his sermon was just on fire that day. I remember him falling or laying down in the center aisle of the church, and he was acting out being a leper. And it was just, just a very strong moment in the sermon. And I just remember feeling, this feeling came over me, and I knew that the Lord was dealing with me that right then. So I couldn't sit still. I couldn't wait for invitations so I could get up there and talk to Brother Allen. Got up there and talked to him, and that's really when I truly gave my heart and my life to Jesus. And it worked out where Jimmy and we were baptized the same day here at church, and it's just something I won't forget. And that was in July of 1997. Since then, I have truly enjoyed learning and growing in my faith and being in fellowship with the best church family anyone could ask for. With God and you. Been through some pretty tough trials in my life, from my parents' car wreck to the sickness and the loss of Jimmy and losing my parents, and of course Ann and other things. And you've been there with me every step of the way, showing me God's love and abundance. And then you've also been there with me through a lot of happy times, through the girls' baby dedications, and just watching Eden and Ella grow up in a church and being involved in the youth group, because like I said, I didn't have that growing up. And then you've supported me when I remarried Shane and added Lily to our family. I showed them love and welcomed them just like I knew you would. So I just want to say that I'm, very thankful for my testimony. And I know that God saved me that day in 1997 when I was 21 years old. So just remember, go visit somebody and invite somebody to church. You just never know what impact you might have on their life and even their future children's lives.